Good morning, this is Onyabike Adventures. My name's Hawk, and today I'm with our head tour guide, Mr. Viet, and we're going to go for a ride on the Honda XR150s. So Onyabike Adventures, we use the Royal Enfield Himalayan for our tours. We consider that the best bike for Vietnam's roads and conditions, but we also know a lot of people are riding around on the XR150, and both myself and Viet happen to have XR150s, and we want to go for a ride on one, tell you a little bit about them, give you the specs, and just an honest review of the bikes. And we both are big fans of the bikes, even though we prefer the Enfield when we're on tour. So the XR150 was developed by Honda about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a sort of enduro dual sport bike. It's not really a full trail bike or a full off-road bike, and certainly not a road bike, but it's actually marketed in Australia as a agricultural bike for farmers to use. So what you've got here is a 150cc 4-stroke single cylinder. That's going to give you comfortably cruise at about 80 to 85 kilometers an hour, which in Vietnam is fast enough. So this is a 150cc single cylinder 4-stroke bike. It's got a carburetor, no fuel injection. It's got a chain drive, as you would expect on a bike of this style. 5-speed gearbox, and it's got a bore and stroke on the piston, 52 and 57 millimeters. So effectively not too much torque and not too much top speed, but somewhere in the middle for both. The bike comes in black, white and red and variations, and it's very small, lightweight. So this bike's got a dry weight of 130 kilograms, so even fueled up with its significant 12 litres fuel tank, it's still not a heavy bike. So if you're making a slight mistake and dropping it in some mud, some water, river crossing, you can always pick this up. And even in the most extreme circumstances, 2 guys can pick this bike out of a ditch and put it back on the road. The seat is 82 centimeters, which is not particularly high. Most average medium-sized guys will ride this bike comfortably. So lightweight, not high, and not too fast, not too torquey. So really a very easy bike to ride. The wheelbase is 1.4 meters, so not particularly long, but not too short. And the bike does perform fairly well. We'll go for a ride in a minute and you can see what we get up to. Now, one of the features of the bike that's worth knowing is, with the bike being a carburetted bike, it actually does have here a choke manual on the carburetor. Now these bikes don't start too well, but in the morning, if you start it on full choke, as soon as it started, flip it down to half choke and then put it onto no choke when you're ready to run, you'll find the bike warms up a little bit quicker. It's not great at warming up, but once it's warm it runs beautifully. The other great feature is, for those of you that have not been used to riding carburetted bikes, you do have your fuel tap here. So you've got a 12-litre tank. When the tap's down like this, you get your first 10 litres. If you then run out of that, you can flip it 180 degrees and that will give you 2 extra litres in reserve. So that on this bike will get you 80 to 100 kilometers more. So really no worries about fuel at all. There is nowhere in Vietnam where those 2 litres is not enough to get you back to a fuel station. And like I say, 12 litres in the tank. It's very rare that you're going to use a full tank in a day's ride.
Morning.
So good morning, Viet.
Good morning, Hawk.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Are you ready for an adventure?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
So here we go. We're heading out into Hoi An. We're gonna try and get out of town quickly because the traffic's not that much fun, and go into the countryside, hopefully find some dirt tracks here and there. These bikes are ideal for small dirt tracks and small river crossings and going out and playing in the countryside. They're not bad in town, small and lightweight and easy to manoeuvre, but much more fun out in the countryside. Here we go over the Cam Kim Bridge. This bridge was built a few years ago. It was a temporary structure and it seems to have remained in place. Now, one thing these bikes can do is they can tuck through narrow spaces. This bridge is not wide enough sometimes for some of the loads that come past. Beautiful view over the river. And as we finish leaving this bridge, we are on to Camp Kim Island. So as I'm riding around on this bike, I find the seat is not so bad. It's a little bit wide, so when you do a long distance, you find that your legs get a little bit sore on the edges of the seat. It's quite square, but it really, for a one-day ride, comfortable enough. Now, a lot of taller people, I'm an average sized guy, but a lot of taller people find the seat a little bit annoying. It's got a very well defined step in it to define the front and back seat, but for those taller people, they want to sit a little bit further back, but they can't because of that step. So their bike's ideal for me for a short ride. For a longer ride, I'll still stick to my Enfield, but for a short ride I find it quite comfortable. Here we are out in the countryside. We find in Vietnam there's hundreds of thousands of kilometers you can do on these small concrete laneways for narrow, slightly bumpy terrain. This bike is great. It's got 160 millimeters of travel on the front forks and 150 millimeters on the back wheel on the rear suspension. So really a lot of movement. Now it can get a little bit annoying sometimes. It's probably could do with some better damping on the suspension. It does get a little bit bouncy, but I'd rather too bouncy than too stiff for the type of roads we get in Vietnam. Here we go, there's a nice bump coming up. I'll stand up and jump it. And the suspension really handles that very well. Like I say, a little bit more damping would be preferable, but it handles it. So here we go, nice little dirt track. It's very narrow. This is a track used by the buffalo and cow herders. I'm going to stand up on the pegs. When I do that, I'm reasonably well positioned on the bike. I mean, it's fairly comfortable. I actually find the tank not in a bad position to grip with my legs. The handlebars are a little bit low, but very easy to handle. Like I say, that suspension's really soft, lots of bouncing. So at only 130 kilograms, you can see the bike is really easy to drift about. This path turned out to go nowhere, so we can just spin it on the stand and off we go. As we go along these rice paddy concrete laneways, you can see a long way. You're absolutely no danger of being surprised by cars, motorbikes or buffaloes, so you can actually open up a little bit. Now when I do open it up, it's a little bit gutless. Obviously this bike is not a road race bike, it's a 150cc dual sport, so to be expected a little bit gutless, but I can get it up to a good 80 to 90 kilometers an hour quite easily. The only problem is the brakes. The front brake is a single disc, it's got quite a small set of calipers, and at the back I've got a drum brake which is not particularly useful. So you have to just keep reminding yourself to keep your eyes open and remember that you're not going to stop too quickly. So while myself and Viet love to go out for a ride on these for a day to go and play in the countryside, a lot of people watching this are obviously coming to Vietnam looking for a full motorbike tour, and a lot of companies out there will take you on a tour with these bikes, but a lot of other companies will actually rent you one of these bikes. And there's some things you need to know if you're going to go off on one of these bikes without a tour company. The bike was manufactured by Honda China, not by Honda in Japan. And although it's a genuine Honda and the build quality of the engine and the frame and everything is absolutely fine, a lot of the replaceable parts tend to wear out quite quickly. They're slightly cheaper quality than a Japanese Honda. So chains, sprockets, cables, carburetor parts, you get a lot more problems a lot sooner. The brakes don't last as long on these bikes. Now, in addition to that, Honda themselves never actually sold this bike in Vietnam and never will. These are all imported, and therefore Honda do not make parts available for these bikes. So a lot of parts are interchangeable with other types of Honda that are in the country, but many of the parts are not. And so you find when you're hiring one of these bikes, the standard of the bike is very variable. Some of them will have been looked after very well, normally the ones that are used on tours, whereas the ones rented to people quite often are not looked after to the same standard, and simply the lack of availability of parts prevents people from doing the maintenance that you would want them to do. So you do need to keep an eye on the quality of the bike if you're going to rent one. If you are in Vietnam and you're going to rent one of these bikes, one of the most important things for you to do is to make sure you inspect the blue card. Now, every vehicle in Vietnam has a blue card which relates to the registration, chassis number, etc. of the motorbike. And when you look at that blue card, you'll find with at least half of the Honda XR150s in the country that blue card does not match the bike. Unfortunately, a lot of them were brought in with slightly dubious paperwork. So if you're renting a bike, check the blue card, make sure it says XR150, make sure the number plate is the same. If it's not, then you wouldn't want to be in a serious accident or problem with that vehicle. It's just not legal. On the other hand, if you're on a tour with a company, I guess it all becomes their problem, and you would hope that they're using fully legal bikes. Okay, here we are back in Hoi An, and we've had a whole lot of fun riding around. So let's summarise the XR150. What do we like about this bike? Well, the most important thing is its weight. It's so light, so easy to throw around. Drop it a little bit, you can pick it up. Take a wrong turn, you can spin it on its side stand. Really lightweight, good fun bike. What else do we like? Well, it's fairly comfortable for a short ride. I wouldn't want to go a long distance on it for more than a day or so. We like the speed. It's not too fast, not too slow. We like the way it handles. Like having a very large fuel tank. If you were going to go out all day, you're definitely not going to run out of fuel. And yeah, overall a really good bike for a day out in Vietnam's countryside. What don't we like? Well, the brakes are a little bit weak, the acceleration and top end are a little bit lacking. The handlebars do feel a little bit low when you stand up. You know, the off-road stuff, you want to stand up, you want to throw the bike around, which is great because it's lightweight, but you do feel like you're sort of riding on a toy bike sometimes. It's not quite big enough. And yeah, we don't particularly like the idea of touring on it. 2 up with luggage, this would be a horrible little bike, you get very uncomfortable. But yeah, in general, very good bike to go out for the day and go for a ride, a lot of fun. That's why me and Viet both have them. Lots of good features, and if you're in Vietnam, there's not a lot of choice of bikes, so actually this is one of the better bikes for that sort of go out and play for a day. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please hit the like button, leave your comments below. If you want to know more about Vietnam, if you love motorbikes, or you just want to see more of me, all you've got to do is hit subscribe and you'll stay up to date with all our new videos. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Now it's time to shut up and get on your bike.